All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to crack open one of the biggest financial mysteries of the last couple of years. We are diving deep into the real story behind gold's record-breaking prices to figure out, is this rally for real? Or is it just some kind of monetary illusion?
So you've seen the headlines, I've seen the headlines. Gold has been on an absolute tear, hitting new highs all through 2024 and into 2025. But the big question everyone's asking is, why? What is really driving this thing? Is there something fundamentally new happening with gold itself, or is there something else going on behind the scenes?
And this whole debate, it really boils down to two main theories, two suspects in our little mystery. In one corner, you've got Team Dollar Weakness. Their argument is pretty simple. Hey, the dollar is falling, so it just takes more of those weaker dollars to buy an ounce of gold. It's just a currency thing. But in the other corner, you have Team Gold Strength. And they're saying, no, it's much deeper than that. The entire world is actually bidding up the price of gold because they want gold itself. Figuring out which of these teams has it right, well, that's absolutely crucial, because the answer tells us everything about whether this rally has legs and what it really means for investors. So to solve this puzzle, our first job is to untangle these two forces. We need to find a way to scientifically isolate gold's true performance from all the noise created by the ups and downs of the US dollar.
And to do that, we need our first investigative tool. It's a really cool method that lets us see gold not just through American eyes, but through a new, truly global lens.
And here it is. It's this clever metric called a USD neutral return. Now, instead of just looking at the price of gold in dollars, this approach looks at how gold is doing against a whole basket of other major world currencies. We're talking the euro, the yen, the pound, the yuan, and the Canadian dollar. This way we can see the change in gold's value that's happening everywhere all at once. And the process itself, it's actually pretty straightforward. First, you reprice gold every single day in those 5 other currencies. Then you just average out that performance to create a global benchmark. And what you're left with, that's the true underlying strength of gold. It answers the key question, is gold rising everywhere, or is this just a US dollar story? So, the big moment. What did this new global lens actually show us when we pointed it at the 2024-2025 rally? What did the evidence say? Well, the results are wow. They're incredibly clear. When you break it down, the data shows that the vast majority, about 95% of the entire price move, came from genuine global gold strength. And the US dollar effect? It's that tiny little gray bar on the right. It was barely even a factor. In other words, this basically confirms it. This is not a US dollar story with gold just passively going along for the ride. Nope. This is a global gold story, and it's being driven by broad-based demand from all around the world. But a good investigator never relies on just one piece of evidence. To be absolutely sure, analysts brought in a much more powerful statistical tool to confirm our primary suspect. They use something called a vector autoregression model, or VAR for short. Now, just think of this thing like financial forensics. It's this powerful model that can analyze how a bunch of different variables, like the dollar, oil prices, market risk, how they all interact with each other and influence gold's price at the same time. It lets us statistically prove how much impact each factor really has. And this model came back with this one crucial number. It found that a massive 80% of gold's day-to-day price changes are due to its own dynamic. That means it's moving on its own terms, separate from what the dollar or oil or the stock market is doing. And this chart just breaks it down perfectly. You see that giant 80% slice? That's gold's own story. Sure, the dollar is still a factor, it's about 17%, but it's clearly a supporting actor here. Gold's own intrinsic demand is the main character in this story, period. Okay, so we've run 2 different tests, and the verdict is in. The real driver here is genuine gold strength. But that leads us to the most important question of all. Why does this actually matter so much? And this, right here, is the key takeaway. If this rally were just about a weak dollar, it would be incredibly fragile. A little rebound in the US currency could wipe out all the gains, just like that. But because we know it's driven by genuine gold strength, this rally is so much more durable. It's built on a foundation of deep, widespread global demand. And this strength, it's rooted in some of the biggest economic trends happening in the world right now. We're talking about central banks all over the globe buying up gold for their reserves. We're talking about investors desperate for diversification in a world of low or even negative real yields.
And it's part of a much bigger search for a reliable store of value in what feels like an increasingly fragmented world.
So, with the mystery of what's been driving gold pretty much solved, what does this tell us about the road ahead? What should we be watching for next? The verdict from our whole investigation is clear, and it really has profound implications. It confirms this isn't just some speculative fad against one currency. The world is fundamentally reevaluating and buying the asset itself, gold.
So looking forward, if you want to know where gold is headed, its path is probably going to depend less on the daily chatter about the dollar. Instead, you'll want to watch these big, fundamental global forces. Keep an eye on those central bank buying patterns. Watch what happens with global real interest rates. And of course, there's the constant hum of geopolitical risk and uncertainty. And all of this leaves us with one final and kind of provocative thought. If gold's value is increasingly being driven by its own global dynamics, separate from any single currency, does that mean it's quietly reemerging as a kind of financial anchor in our modern system? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.